Well, if you followed the series, we're now on the 100th video. We're probably 11 to 12 hours worth of videos. If you're still awake, if I've not bored you, well done. Chances are you haven't made it to this point, because they are very boring and very droll. However, they do contain a lot of good information, so it's up to you really. I'm going to finish this off now so that we're in line with what we did with the Python work. One or two changes need to be made. The first one is this one. Instead of post person, we are going to use the file add person. We're going to post the information, so we're going to keep the connections that we made down here. What I'm going to do is just change how the parameters are read in or passed through, and what's returned back to the main UI. And before I do that, I'm going to explain one thing, well, a couple of things actually. First of all, doing background. I've got far too much in here. We need to keep whatever we do in the background as small as possible. It's a program that's running. This will take up a lot of space, a lot of time. It's not a good idea. So if you look at changing the efficiency of the program, this is a good place to start. Don't try and get rid of some of this stuff, put it on the outside and pass the parameters in rather than having everything inside. So that is not normal. Secondly, the way I'm handling the string parameters again is not normal. We'd probably have an object or create our own object to handle it, but that is well beyond what I want you to learn at the moment and what we're teaching. So we're not creating objects, we're just going to do it as simply as possible, but this isn't the best way of doing it. The next thing is I said that all of this class, the async task, is the thing that runs in the background. Actually it's not. Only the do in background actually runs on it a separate thread. Okay, so only the do in background runs on a separate thread. And I'm mentioning this because anything that is in here cannot talk to the user interface, the UI. So now that we've got some fields on there, I can't write to them and I can't read from them whilst I'm on a separate thread, which is why we have this little method down here. So this acts as a sort of conduit. So what happens is that this thread, when it's finished, passes its information to here, and from here this can talk to the UI. So nothing in the thread can talk to it, the runnable thread. This can't talk to the UI. However, this is not actually on the thread and can talk to the UI. Now that is very important in Android programming. We've got to know what's running on the thread and what isn't. So we are in here going to set all of our field names. So what we're doing at the moment is we're taking the result and we're putting the message on the screen. What I also want to do in here is sort of blank those fields out when we get results back. I'll show you what I mean as we go through it. We'll run it a couple of times and you'll see the use of this on post execute and how we can manage the UI with it. So let's get into it. First of all, I am going to, because I'm going to be using first name, last name and age here, I'm going to have to make them global like I did with this JSON text, otherwise it's not going to be able to see it. So at the moment that input value there is not available in here. Okay, it's out of scope. So I have to make it sort of global. I'm also going to change its name. So let's set up some global variables for all the fields that I've got. So I had an edit text, and one of the edit texts was first name. So that's defined it. I had an edit text for last name, and I had an edit text for the age. So I've defined those globally, and I can use first name, last name and age in my onPost execute now. If I'd have declared them inside here, I wouldn't be able to use them. So that's a good start. So I'm going to first of all pick up all of these values. I need the first name, I need the last name, and I need the age from the screen. So let's just change this one, because this one is first name. All I need to do now is type first name, because I've already declared it there. And now I'm going to do the last name version. So the variable's already got its type, so I just need to say what it is. It's an edit text, and I need to find the view by ID, and it's in the resource file in the ID section, and it is now I've got view last name and text last name. I've named these different. The view is just the label that appears on the screen. The text version is the one that we're actually sort of typing in and getting a value. So I need the text last name there. And I need to do the same thing for age. Age is an edit text. So find view by ID, r.id. And the same thing goes, we need to look for text age. So now I am picking up all the values that we type in on the form and storing them in these variables. My next task is to sort of pass them on this line. Okay. Now I need to, if you remember, I need to convert things to a string. They're not strings at the moment. So when I click, I'm going to have to convert my data to a string. So I'll start with the first name, you'll see what I mean. So fn for first name equals, that's the first name field. And what I want to do is get the text from it and convert that to a string. Now I have a variable fn which contains a string for the value that was in that text box. And do the same for last name and age. So string last name equals last name dot get text dot to string. And finally for age, I need to set up a string. Let's call it age dot get text dot to string. So now I've got the strings for each and every item that I had on the screen, and I need to now pass them into my async task. And if you remember that on this one we just added a parameter, so we're just going to do that, and the three parameters I've got now are fn, ln and a. So now I'm passing in all my parameters, so I should be able to access them using this strings variable here. So I'll be using strings 1, strings 2, strings 3 to set up the parameters. So are we good to go? So here we go. So the string URL parameters is, I think, what we need to change. Now we've got to build the string properly, so we need to have the key value pairs, and the key is first name and the equal sign. Then we're going to join to it the value we found at strings 1, and this is string 0, this is string 1, this is string 2, this is string 3. So we're set up there with string 1. Now I need to join them all together, and the way I'm going to do that is by joining that with the ampersand sign. If you remember back to a URL, that the variables were separated with an ampersand sign. So now I can just continue adding in my field names. So the next one would be last name equals, and then join that with strings 2, and add to that the ampersand sign, and then my last variable, which is age. Don't forget the equal sign, and join to that strings 3. So in a very poor way, in normal programming we would do this differently. We would have an object to pass, but string building is fine. This will work perfectly well, and you should use it unless you study object-oriented programming and fancy having a go at that. This will do nicely, and I don't really need to change anything else. My parameters are going to work here. The rest of the code is going to be pretty much the same. The only thing I really want to do at the end is change what happens in this on post execute. But hopefully we've now got something that can add data to a database. I'm going to run the program just to see if everything's working fine and if there's anything I need to change. Again, I'm going to have to wait for a few minutes until this emulator works. So let's have a look. There we go. So I can set in a first name. Let's do something that won't work. Harry, Charles, age -3, and click press. Message: the data was rejected. We can see that it's working because we're getting a message back from the file that we expected, but I haven't added anything to the database. Also, when I press the button, I really want to sort of have a blank field ready for my next record. I may have made a mistake, so I want to put another record in, who knows, but I want these fields to blank out and not be there. And also, at the moment, it's waiting for me to type on the age field, and I want to change that so that it's waiting for me to type on the first name field. I'm going to do all of that in the on post execute block. So let me stop the program and whiz down to it, and it's quite straightforward. So I'm going to, first of all, after I've run this program and it's come down to here, what I'm going to do is set the fields to blank again. So first name dot set text, and all I need to do is put an empty set of quotes in, and that will set it to blank. I can do the same with last name. Blank, and I can do the same with age. And the last thing that I want to do is change that focus so that it's not on age waiting for me to type, it goes back to first name. And there's a little method that on my first name box, it is called request focus. Okay, so it's requesting the focus to go on it. Now my program is actually finished. There's no more to add to it. So I'm going to run it, just check that it works, and show you the difference from the last time we ran it. So let's just run the app. I'll put the emulator up this time so I know when it's done. Now we really have matched what we did in Python. We're at the same point as we were in Python. We can now add records to the database. This will work if you can just attach your phone to it. It will work on your phone or your tablet. There's nothing extra you've got to do. If you wanted to put it in the Google Play Store, even that is possible. So here we go. Let's put something in the database. Let's take a look at my database first. So here's my database with Jane, Joe and Eric. I've actually tested beforehand, so I'm going to get an ID which is higher than 3. I had a little play earlier. So let's put somebody in. Let's put that Harry Charles back in. Harry Charles, and I don't know, let's make him 12. Press enter. Now we haven't checked if things go in the database, but we've got a message saying success. The data was added to the database, and remember we have to browse again to see it. Oh, I've not logged in. Oh dear, I now seem to have a problem with my server, which isn't very good after all of that. See if I can go to localhost again. It'd be better if I spelt it correctly. There we go, back to PHP My Admin. There we go, I can now log in. UPS person, and there we go, Harry Charles 12. Oh, I thought I was going to have to remake that video. And we can just keep adding details. So Josh Smith, and if I don't include an age, just press, it's going to tell me that one or more fields haven't been filled. If I just give it a last name and an age, Davey 22, and press again, get the same message. They haven't been filled. Humphrey Davey, and I'm going to give him an age of 2. If I press that, he should be successfully entered into the database, and if I come back to here and click browse, we should see Humphrey Davey in there. So that's it. We've got to the end. I'd said earlier that I wasn't going to do anything with this JSON at the moment. The fact that you've got JSON back is good. What you do with it is for your own project. I will, however, perform some videos on how to program APIs, probably in Python, even in JavaScript, which uses JSON. I don't think I'm going to do anything in Android, simply because, as you can see, with one line of code we did a read of a database, whereas in Android it's taken quite a lot of work. And the same will go if we're doing some JSON decoding. That is a project for you to do. I will have a look at playing around with JSON in Python, probably even in PHP and in JavaScript. Maybe make some maps up, put some things on some maps, or display things on a screen. If I get the time, maybe I'll do a simple version of parsing this JSON, but I don't want to give you too much for your coursework. I need you to actually work that one out yourself. Anyway, you've got to the 100th video. We've made it all work. Congratulations, well done. Hopefully you've got a good start to your project. I know It's taken a long time, and there's not a great deal of code. Even this isn't a great deal of code. But I hope it's given you a real good understanding of what's going on and will help you debug your programs. So until the next video.